So, knock at the door, week 3 of Play for Today 2.0 on 5. Of course, this is a review that will include spoilers, so watch it first. So on the first viewing, I was okay with it, but fairly nonplussed. On my more recent viewing, after it went out, I just watched it on the weekend, I got into it rather more. So my initial notes on A Knock at the Door after the first viewing were that it certainly commanded my attention, but I'm unsure how well... Come on, Jester. I was unsure how well its essence will linger in the noggin. It entertained to a degree without ever truly engaging the emotions or intellect on a deeper level. The characters felt more like functionaries than deeply realised individuals, and my own feelings throughout were, frankly, not all that numerous. It was, well, all right. On the second viewing, despite obviously knowing the key plot developments, I did feel that, ironically enough, the tension came across better and it did grip me rather more. It had a very immediate relatability. Many viewers could imagine this being their own home, say, even if it isn't the typical home. And I do think A Knock at the Door saw Channel 5 playing relatively safe with the sort of domestic thriller customary in their schedules, I gather. And its production was sound, done reasonably well, but it ultimately felt like a cross between a run-of-the-mill Tales of the Unexpected and Inside Number 9's Simon Says episode, albeit lacking this latter episode's macabre humour and confounding twists. Like the revelation that Lenny Bray, played by Alan Davies, was a rumman, felt inevitable from the outset, almost a bit too sort of obvious. The music, however, was subtle, but I felt on my first viewing that the overall effect was one of banality. And I do feel that Daniel Rand's directs very well. It's got a good visual sense, this play. We've got a strong sense of this affluent Hampstead setting. And you've got really good set dressing and production design here. And the nocturnal cityscape photography is very, very good, I thought, at the start. And it was very effective how that shifted from the opening grainy sort of VHS footage near the start of a younger Alan Davies, sort of as Bray. That was all very well done. How it was set up at the start, that was excellent, actually. As I say, the music didn't distract me too much. It does steer you a bit, but it was rather better done than Never Too Late, I would say, the other Vertigo films production. And this felt a big step up from Never Too Late overall. So, although on my first viewing I was rather sort of sceptical of David Whitehouse's script, really, and didn't feel it was surprising enough, really, or original enough on overall, I did feel the acting across the board served the material well and embellished it. You got a small cast of 3, which I think was a very good thing. Sometimes there's large casts for the sake of it, and they did what was asked of them. They were somewhat contained by the script's limitations. I thought Alan Davies conveyed wearied arrogance well, while Nikki Amuka Bird and the newcomer Logan Mersch sustained the tension admirably, I thought. I mean, Davies was excellent, I thought. This came through more on the second viewing, I would say, as a loathsome, smug individual here, this celebrity, Lenny Bray, a successful comedian from the 90s and everything. He's very dissembling as well, and it's apt how his lack of patience and his lack of basic humanity really provides his undoing. He goads Ben far too much. He creates more danger for himself and his wife through his goading. Ultimately, he reveals who he is, and we get the truth. I really liked how, in a play nominally tackling the social media age, his handwriting was actually crucial in his downfall. Davies' performance, in a way, reminded me somewhat of Norman Rodway as Sir Dominic in Nemini Lethbridge's original Play for Today from December 1973, 52 years ago, Baby Blues, which is a very impressionistic, sort of strange play about Lethbridge's experience of postnatal depression through the Xena Walker character. And she has an incredibly loathsome husband in that, played by Rod Way. It's a very sort of upper class, domineering, drunken, philandering figure. And Davies, I don't think he quite had the chance to create a portrayal as, frankly, baroque as Rodway's was. But it's similarly stylised, horrible sort of performance, really, which I thought was really good. I thought with Nikki Amuka Bird, initially, the sense of her being a psychotherapist just wasn't strong enough, but that actually really came across as the play developed, and you saw it more on the second viewing, and that she is able to calm the situation down and diffuse some of the potential for violence. Although, of course, Lenny messes it all up. But I thought her performance was really excellent, actually, and came across much more on the second viewing. And yeah, Logan Mersch, I think, is quite a find here. He has a threat and is quite scary at times, but he's also very genuinely motivated. And this is a portrayal that transcends what could have simply been a scary young hoodlum type stereotype. We do get a sense of the wider failings of, say, the care system and problems that have resulted from a lack of a stable family upbringing, that he's been in many temporary homes, never anywhere permanent where he's received love and nurturing. That all came across very well, and in a way that provides the social aspect of this play. So I wouldn't say it is especially strong when it comes to the socio-political import. It was wanting on the whole. And its plot is a deterministic mechanism that vaguely accessed an Operation Yewtree style malaise without having massive depth, really, looking at the society beyond. There is perhaps a theme of social media there, but I don't think it was drawn out quite strongly enough, really. Like how Ben had tracked Lenny down, perhaps, would have suggested that. But Ben's mum's suicide is structural, being born of a celebrity culture that elevated people like Lenny Bray in that era and made them completely unaccountable. And of course that was very much the case back in the 70s as well, as Operation Yewtree revealed. On the second viewing, its originality actually did stand out more. I was thinking it was very stale on the first viewing, but actually I did feel this offered like a gentler, more humanistic ending than was seeming likely. At the 80% point, it seems sort of inevitable that there'll be a bloodbath here, but it avoids a bloodbath. Or even like a weird, disturbing ending of something like A Photograph, which you see at the top left there, John Bowen's sequel to Robin Redbreast. And Robin Redbreast, I think, is the best play for today thriller of the original run. I mean, possibly, in a way, there's plays like Gangsters are also partly in the thriller mould as well, and Gangsters is great, but certainly Robin Redbreast is the really, really great one that's so strange and compelling and tuned into the zeitgeist in a very interesting way. This is a lot more straightforward, and it fits in with some of the gentle humanism that you get in Channel 4's recent and indeed current anthology strand On the Edge, which I think is largely pretty good anthology, but there's not enough of it. There's like 3 25-minute dramas every couple of years almost, it seems like, but Paul Copley was in that one as well. But this did seem like it was ending on a note that was in accordance with the current more gentle turn in culture, I suppose. But I thought that was good, because it seemed like it was going to be harsher and nastier. It was quite nice to have that expectation overturned. As usual, we've got to ask how it did with viewers and critics. With critics, well, I haven't found any reviews at all of this, which I think is pretty paltry, and the critics should be engaging on a more serious, sustained level with the return of anthology drama in prime time. So Channel 4 had Black Mirror on, but that was, I think, slightly later, maybe 10 o'clock when that used to be on, but that's more than a decade ago. Inside Number 9, I think, was a slightly later slot. But this is an admirable thing that Channel 5 are giving this a go. It should be being assessed in a more sustained, critical way, rather than everybody just slagging off at Never Too Late and not bothering to write about the others at all and engage with them. I think that's a poor show from the critics, to be honest. It's pitiful. In terms of audience size, it did somewhat worse, really, after having a week's break because of a big sporting event on the 27th of November. A Knock at the Door managed 527,000 and sort of a 4% audience share, below the 766,000 and 6.2% share. That's a slot average, but it surpassed BBC Two's drama The Ridge, whose finale at 9:45 p.m. reached 121,000 viewers, 1.1% share. So it's still doing reasonably well. 7-day figures will probably be 800, 900,000. 28-day figures may approach 1 million potentially for it. In terms of audience reaction, it seems to have been relatively strong. Like the IMDb rating is slightly higher than either of the others. The Letterboxd rating is very high indeed. Indeed, there's 2 people who worked on the production have voted for it, interestingly enough. But yeah, overall, it has a 77% equivalent reaction index without doing any weighting or anything. I think I would rate this around 66%, say. I think it's a lot better crafted piece than Never Too Late, for example. I didn't think it had the flair, quite had the depth of Big Winners, but I thought this did have much to communicate regarding the impact of structural failings in the care system. Definitely. It didn't do the social media theme with anything like the sort of force that maybe Black Mirror would have done. And at times there was a good mordant humour to it, but maybe not quite enough. You would have got more of that in Inside Number 9, say. As I say, this felt like a pretty good combination of Channel 5's usual thrillers and On the Edge, say, Channel 4's anthology. Yeah, it was pretty good.